Thank you, everybody, for your patience. A little late getting setting up this evening. Welcome to the Monday, April 1st, 2024 Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board meeting. Louise Berry is unable to join us this evening, as is Jim Levy, who's on a much-deserved vacation, but we still are here with a quorum, so we will take up the agenda. Let me say that I will be adding to the agenda at the conclusion of the meeting a discussion about the retention of a consultant to assist in the review of the traffic reports that have been created by Creighton Manning for the Rockledge property. And I'll explain it when we get there, but that will be added to the agenda as another item at the end of the meeting. I know of nothing else. Gretchen, will you? No. Okay. You have the meeting notes, Jim's meeting notes. Gratefully, he's sent them to us, even though he's not here. So, is everybody okay with them? And if so, can I have a motion to accept them? So moved. Thank you. And a second. Sean, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. You have the March 18 minutes. Has everybody had a chance? Oh, you did not have them? Gretchen has not been able to share the March 18 minutes, and so we will take them up at the next meeting. Correspondence and announcements. Anyone? Okay. That brings us to the new applications for this evening. There being only one. That is Alexander Wright, 23 Hughes Road, site plan special use and wetlands permit, tree removal and light brush clearing. So who's here? Okay. Kim is working with us this evening, and we're very thankful for that. And so she'll work with you to step up to the microphone and give us an overview of what you would like to do.
Sure. So we had the pre-hearing a few months ago. Just to recap, we would like to install solar panels on our rear roof of the property, as you can see in the diagram there. And in order to do that, our consultant advised us that we would need to remove a line of trees directly in back of the house to create enough sun exposure for us to qualify for the New York State tax incentives. So we mistakenly went ahead and commissioned this work with Dave's Tree Service, not being aware of the town of Rhinebeck regulation about the 100-foot buffer around the stream mark. We have a stream running through our property. So since we had the pre-hearing, we've engaged Labella, an environmental engineering firm, to do a delineation of the property to determine which part of the property is actually considered classified as wetlands from a federal regulatory point of view, and to help us work through a potential voluntary remediation. And so what we are proposing is, so I'll just recap what actually happened. We removed the 3 large trees, as well as some smaller saplings that were below 6-inch diameter further in the property, and we did clear brush in the back of our property. We also brought in a thin layer of topsoil to plant grass back there. So what we are proposing is voluntary remediation in collaboration with Labella, is to take the amount of land that is actually, according to the delineation, qualifies as wetland is what you see shaded, the sort of light gray shaded area there. It's this area here. So it's 0.8 acres of wetland, which we are proposing to remove the topsoil and to replant the native species, the brush that was grown there originally. We think now that the ground is softening, we can do that pretty much right away and in the outcome of this meeting. So that's the gist of it. If you answer any questions, concerns.
Well, Kim, have you had a chance to look over Jim's notes, or should we just go through those?
Yeah. We'll pull up these notes right here. So one of the things I had a question on was that one of the things Jim had asked for was if there was an existing conditions plan showing the changes, and then an existing versus a proposed plan. I didn't see those in the file.
No, we did. We have the delineation and the site plan that is based on current state.
Okay. So what Jim had kind of just reiterated was about what had happened, which was that the land had already been cleared. You've been in touch with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Yeah, an update, we heard back from them last week after I submitted this package, it was Thursday. Brian Forces at the Army Corps had a phone call with Ellis up with Bella, our consultant there. He informed us that because it was below 1/10 of an acre, which is their threshold to require remediation, from the U.S. Army Corps' point of view, no remediation is required, and they don't need us to do anything. But we're prepared to do it anyway because we want to, in good faith, try to rectify what we did and keep it with the spirit of the town regulation.
Jim was also, I think, asking if the fill that was brought to the site was in excess of 200 yards.
No, it was 57 cubic yards.
Do you have documentation for that?
I have well, from the landscaper who did it, I have a text message saying that's the amount that's filled.
I'll open it up to other planning board members unless you have something else, Ken.
I just wanted to one of the comments that Jim had made too was that it was stated in the EAF that the property was not located in the LWRP area, but it is in the LWRP. You wouldn't mind just updating your EAF for that?
Sure.
It's just a
I
matter
don't know what that means, but okay.
so there's a land front, it's about 100 feet from the river. It just requires referral to the WAC, which is the Waterfront Advisory
Okay.
Committee.
Okay.
We'll take care of that, but it's just, if you could
Okay.
just update your application so that it reflects that it is within the.
Sure, so just update it and then resubmit it to Gretchen.
Can he come in and just correct the one that we had on file?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we go back to the site plan? And I didn't really understand. When you pointed out the area that you said is within the 100-foot boundary?
No, so there's two things shown here. Sorry.
Here's a better one.
Yeah, okay, great. So this is the area that the delineation classified as wetland, and then this is the area that's within the 100-foot buffer.
The crosshatch?
Yeah, this is all within the 100 feet, and then this is the area that is really
Okay. And did you do anything to the area that is designated as wetland?
Yes, we did clear it and put topsoil there and plant grass, and that's what we're going to undo.
And
I'll show you, you sent before and after pictures to the agency.
Yeah, I think we're at the end of the.
Yeah.
But why did you, it had nothing to do with your solar installation, right?
That's right. It was something, I'll be candid, it was something that the contractor suggested, said as long as we're removing these trees, why don't we just come in there and like clear the brush for you so you'll have a little extra yard. We thought, good idea. We said, I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus, but we said, do we need a permit for that? And they said no. So they were incorrect. They didn't, I think, know about the town buffer
And
regulations.
what specifically did they clear out of wetland?
Well, they cleared the sort of scrub brush. You can sort of see in here, like between the trees. It was just, they left the substantial trees there. There were a few saplings and then the brush that was growing there. So I can't name all the species, but
Okay.
the brush that was growing there. And they grew.
And how did they do it? How did they get the roots of the shrubs or whatever was there?
They had one of those, what you call it, but like a lawnmower kind of thing with kind of a fancy lawnmower that sort of pulls up the brush somehow. I don't know what you call that
But they
thing.
have to put the roots up. How would they do that with the lawnmower?
Well, it was like kind of a lawnmower with like a
Brush hog.
A brush hog, is that what you call it? Yeah, it was a brush hog, I guess. It's better. That's the term.
And then about an inch of topsoil
That's
was laid over that area.
Right, and then grass was planted, which you can't see in this picture, it's starting to come in
So the removal of the brush and the trees wasn't necessarily for shading mitigation?
now. No, that was, the removing of the 3 large trees was for the shading, and this was just an additional voluntary thing that we did. with the
Yeah, it's
contractor
nowhere
provisions.
close to shading the
Right.
solar.
Yeah, no, it was not directly.
And, sorry, Barry, I just had a quick question.
Okay.
While you were saying, so these were these trees right here? the
That's
three-
right.
These are the ones that have been removed?
That's right, that's right, they were all over 6-inch diameters.
And what kind of trees were they?
I do not know.
Did you use the chips from the tree anywhere on the property?
No, it was all removed by the
Okay.
trees.
So it just seems strange that only an inch of topsoil was added and you filled in a wetland. Did you do additional drainage? Cut a
No,
channel or
actually, the
anything?
area that is the wetland, it's still actually pretty wet. Like, it's still, like, there's still water, you can see that it's still, like, so there's, the area around it is, we do have grass growing. And there's some in the wetland, there's like, it's kind of puddled a little bit.
Yeah, well, the wetland comprises various plants and.
Right.
I guess I would have to see it to fully understand. But,
Your opportunity, Mike.
Yeah, I don't think that, I think what was recommended is planting of pollinators. or
That's right.
something. From my point of view, I don't believe that's adequate. It's right next to the stream, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is when the stream floods its banks, that there are things there like shrubs,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
to keep the land from being scoured away.
Yeah.
And pollinators are not going to do that.
So do you have a recommendation of what we should plant there?
I think that we could get you to talk to somebody who would have a recommendation. I agree, we need to really see it.
How wide is the screen?
It's about 3 feet across.
What stream is it? What's the name of it? It connects to a whole
Yeah,
system.
ultimately, I don't know what the name of it is, I've never seen it named. It connects up, it goes across Rhinebeck Road and then up past the gardens, and then ultimately it flows into Hudson somewhere.
Yeah, it meets up with
Yeah.
another stream.
Where's your driveway, where's the road on there?
So the road comes in about here. It's like a circular driveway here. So about like that.
and that road running diagonally on the right-hand side of the screen,
This one,
voiced or?
no, this is Creed Ankings Road that runs like Garden, or it runs onto the farm. Buse Road is like more or less about here.
Okay, so that was not your driveway that you were pointing to, that's the actual road?
Well, our driveway is
Boise-
here,
it's like
and
Boise
the
Road,
road
right?
goes right about here,
Okay.
up to Rhinebeck Road.
So as a result of this work, have you noticed any changes in the neighborhood or changes in your property?
No, we have had, so there's a history of flooding in the area.
Oh,
And we have had, since we did it, there were 2 pretty extreme weather events. We had in September, the highest rainfall in Dutchess County in 30 years over a 2-week period. So we did see some flooding after that. And then in December, as you recall, there was like very intense flooding after, I think it was the most since like Hurricane Irene or something. That flooded, I think, everywhere. So we did see those. But beyond that, we haven't seen.
so nothing affecting the neighborhood?
No, but those 2 events did affect our neighbors. Like one of our neighbors had like a lot of people had some flooding in his lawn, but we don't think, according to Labella, the amount of clearance that we actually did would not have substantially affected that.
I'm asking because maybe remediation would need to take that into consideration. If there was an impact beyond just the property.
Did your own property flood a bit?
Yeah, but it hasn't passed too. Like we said, that happened.
Can you show where that happened?
Sure. That's right. Like, kind of up in here. Actually, we don't really know what's normal here, but a little bit here, but a little bit under our lawn here. It didn't come up to the house.
What's that large light gray area to the top? Is that
This?
yours?
This is our property, yeah, this whole rectangle is our property. This is all, woodland area. Very much.
Anyone else?
And you said it was Dave's Tree Service?
That's right.
And what month was this done?
September
Oh,
of last year.
Anybody else? right, and we have a draft procedural resolution, I believe.
Yep. So it says here that the town, Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows. On the application of Allenton Right for site plan, special use permit, wetlands permit under Town Code, Chapter 125, Section 125-72, 125-66, and 120-4, respectively, for tree and brush removal for solar panel installation at 23 Boyce Road within an RN1 district. Resolution states to planning board accepts the application, supporting documents is adequate for further review by the planning board and advisors to the public. Jim here had mentioned to classify it as a type 2 action under 617.5C8. What this section is for type 2 is existing landscape, maintenance landscaping, and I looked into the handbook. I don't think this really qualifies for existing maintenance of landscaping. I did look at other type 2 actions to see if anything else would qualify for this. I didn't really see anything. There is stuff for solar, but the application before the planning board isn't going to be solar installation. My recommendation is that you classify this as unlisted action.
I would like to suggest that we suggest to the applicant that they get expert advice on what kind of plantings should be done in that wetland area. And I think it has to be somebody like Hudsonia, not just a landscaper, but somebody who knows wetlands and what's needed.
Well, I certainly think it's a good idea, I don't disagree, I don't know that it needs to be in the procedural resolution. per
No,
se.
but if we were to make a formal resolution, they could get started doing it for the next meeting.
That's fine. All right, we'll figure out where to work that in. Schedule the public hearing
Public hearing.
would be May 6th at 6 PM.
6 p.m. or 6:05?
6:05, I apologize.
Okay. And then delegate planning board members to conduct a field visit.
I will go.
Okay, who would like to go within that?
I'll go with that now.
Okay, and then Sean?
Craig.
No, Craig, sorry. I just wanted you to wake up.
Unless you want to go instead.
Recommendation, refer it out to the Conservation Advisory Board for review and written comments. Also refer it out to the Waterfront Advisory Committee for review and written comments concerning consistency with the LWRP. Refer it out to HAPAC for review and written comment for historic and or archaeological elements. Refer it to Dutchess County Planning Department based on General Municipal Law 239N, and authorizes that any information, comments presented at the public hearing that may arise from the field visit or referrals can be worked into the working draft for the approval resolution.
I have a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Sharon, second.
Second.
Thank you, Craig, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions?
May I ask a question? I'm just wondering how this relates to, so our solar permit application is blocked at the moment, pending removal of the town permit, the town violation. We've been trying to get this work done since September, so I'm just wondering, do we still have to, what is the timeline that we have to wait till after the outcome of this to start that? Okay.
Because it is a mediation as part of a response to a notice of violation in South Florida. We did not add Gretchen or Edna's.
Yes, I was just going to bring that up.
Okay.
So, would you like us to reach out to Hudsonia? Do you want to, I guess, what you could do is you could always ask us to reach out to Hudsonia and make the motion that we engage Hudsonia if they are.
You understand when we reach out to a consultant like this that it's through your escrow?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. So, are you, maybe we don't need a resolution if you're agreeing to allow us to do that?
Sure.
Is that, okay?
I would just say the motion would just be that we
Engage.
engage Hudsonia.
Right.
With the consent of the
With
applicant.
the consent of the applicant. So Edna, do you want to make that motion?
I move that we do that.
Craig?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. All right, we'll look forward to seeing the results. Thank you, Mr. Wright. Move now into the public hearing portion of the meeting. First up this evening is Thomas Daniels, 8 Site Back Road, site plan and special use permit for Blue Mountain Solar.
Hello, I'm Mike Bailey. I'm the engineer for the applicant. We were here last month to go over rooftop solar at the project. There were concerns from the board, glare, which we submitted a report to the board. I don't know if they had any questions. I know there was a site visit by the planning board, I think the historical board, which I think went well. I think we discussed the results of that too. So I don't know if there are any further questions based on that, or we have the public hearing first, or what the procedure is.
Well, the procedure is we talk first and then we open it up to the public. I'm looking at Jim's notes. The only thing I see new is that KPAC has submitted a report that should be reviewed and discussed. I also believe that since Jim prepared these notes, we received a CAP report and input. So I don't see anything we need to add to Jim's report. That would take me then to the folks here who made the site visit and ask for their reports.
And I tried sending photos and for some reason it did not work, so we can't look at them on the screen, but I did. Made some print copies which maybe you could share.
Same copy.
So what you have here on top is the house itself, and the arrow is pointing to the roof on which the solar panels will be erected. And down below you have, and that is facing west, so it's facing over the river. And then down below you have a photo that's facing south and facing the neighbor. And I'm standing relatively close to the neighbor's line. And so you can see where the panels go. And then if you flip over, that westerly view is shown here on top. And since there was some discussion about large rocks, etc., that had been moved around or taken off the property, I took one shot of the landscape. The roof is relatively shallow. It's 6/12, I think that's how you say it. And so if there is any reflection, it will be reflected, I think, to the sky. I don't think that a neighbor or anyone across the river is going to see a reflection from the solar. Sharon, what can you add?
The visibility heading south, it's not too bad, but coming north on Line Cliff Road, it sticks out very well. But that's just like right here in the face, it's,
The house sticks out.
well, the roof, the two sections of the roof where it's proposed. I haven't had other concerns, but it's the one that's brought over the dam, so. But the HAPAC report covered a lot of my concerns, and so the George's CAD, the UAC report covered a lot of my concerns. But it is extremely visible heading north, or heading north, northwest.
Okay.
My own view is that putting solar on the roof is very unlikely to make the roof somehow more visible or more offensive. The HAPAC notes and CAD notes I thought were of great interest, but I didn't think that they were focused really on the benefits or deficits of putting solar on the roof. To me, it does not increase in any significant way to what people are already objecting about the property and the house. So that's where I come out.
I concur that this is, it's kind of just an incremental addition to what's already there. I know that, and I went back and I looked at the recording from the approval, which was in June of '22 for the construction of this house. And the part of that approval process was that there would be vegetative screening. And there was kind of a delicate balance in the selection of the species so that they wouldn't overgrow and block the neighbor's view, but they would be sufficient to screen the house. And I don't have enough of a command of what is there and how closely that adhered to the plans that were submitted as far as the vegetation. Do you have is that part of the filing that shows what's the existing
I didn't
plantings?
see what the existing plans were.
Because I've just done a drive-by and it does stick out. And I don't know if those plantings were ever put in place or if they would, presumably they wouldn't interfere with the function of the solar because it is up on the second story. And as I said, part of the program was to prevent them overgrowing and blocking the neighbor's view of the river. I just have to wonder out loud if this, if this had been submitted at the same time that the house was planned, would this have been the straw that broke the camel's back, for instance? Maybe just a bridge too far.
We didn't ever see any plans for a house.
Not, well, in '22, yes,
Right.
there were plans for the house, but they were not part of this. This was not part of that submittal.
Right.
And this comes, a little over a year after the plans were filed.
Right, but I think
For the
our focus,
construction of this
wasn't our
house.
focus on the shed, its location?
It was on the shed and the location and also the view shed.
Yeah,
And,
but I don't
yeah.
think there was
So,
any discussion.
The
And
one
the
thing that I
building-
wanted
the
to
building
point out,
height. The building height also.
There's the building
Yeah.
permit. There was much discussion about the height of the building,
On the original approval
the
process.
original approval. There was a lot of discussion about screening from the neighbors and the getting the trees in there. There was extensive discussion about that. There was extensive discussion about the driveway and the steepness of the driveway.
Yeah.
There was extensive discussion about what was described at the time as a postage-sized piece of property, and a lot was going on the property. I recall, I can say whether all the right decisions were made or not, I can say this property did not go without scrutiny over what I would consider to be a number of meetings.
But I don't think we had jurisdiction over the architecture of this house, which is what many people are complaining about.
Many people are complaining about the loss of what they consider to be a property that was more historically aligned with the location itself and what's there now. And they're complaining about the size and scale and all of those sorts of things. We can accept the criticism as valid and heartfelt. However, that is not going to allow us to go back and undo, in my opinion.
What I don't remember is any discussion about the removal of large boulders.
There was, this is from memory, so I could be incorrect. But I believe after the approval was given, there were some fits and starts with getting the project itself going. Also, it's coming back to me, there was extensive discussion about whether or not the rock would be blasted or not blasted,
Yeah.
and what impact that would have on destabilizing the properties around.
Wasn't there the rock right on the house site?
The house itself, as I recollect, was built,
Around the rock.
it is called Rhine Cliff for a
Right.
reason. It's not haphazard that the cliff is in that name. And so everything along there is built on a rocky slope in many ways. And I think we tried carefully to consider that, especially with the discussion. I mean, we asked for an engineering report about how the rock was going to be removed. I do believe that, I recall a conversation with the building contractor about which was coming first, the chicken and the egg in terms of house design. And the answer was, well, we need to know how much rock we can remove before we design a house. Well, it was like, no, the other way
Went on
around.
forever, as I remember.
And that took some time. So this has not been without its issues right from the beginning. I don't know, and John and Kim can advise, that the concerns that are being raised by HAPAC and CAB now, in retrospect, about what's there, have much bearing on the decisions they're making in terms of the solar installation. But I could be wrong. You will advise me if I'm wrong.
Well, I haven't seen the HAPAC reports. What is their comment?
Well, more specifically, I would read, I guess, since no one's, some of the planning board members, I assume, had the opportunity.
I have them here if you'd like.
Well, sure, I will try to summarize some of them. This is the one from HAPAC, which says a request was made that HAPAC perform a site visit to the above property to review the proposed installation of solar panels. Our visit revealed a large new house, extensive tree loss, and wholesale regrading that has radically altered drainage patterns as well as the natural topography of the land, all inconsistent with what we understand to be the preservation protocol for this highly sensitive area. Our volunteer committee with limited formal preservation training is heavily reliant on the Secretary of the Interior standards, their bulletins and briefs, all of which are offered online. See the link below. Though concern is expressed for the introduction of solar panels within the historic settings, there appears to be an acknowledgement that they are inevitable. The bulletin clearly addresses where solar panels should be placed, but only as it pertains to the historic buildings themselves, and in those cases recommends that it be placed on an addition or back porch rather than on the historic building. The historic building is no longer there, and they're not being proposed to go on the historic building. Certainly the glare of solar panels from Rhinecliff Road, or for that matter the river view, would be disturbing. However, given the insensitive nature of the overall project, the historical context has in effect been removed. Perhaps the CAB's comments might be more applicable in a situation when history has been effectively erased from the site. The CAB report that came in today says, regrettably, CAB has no choice but to echo the sentiments and disappointments of HAPAC's findings in regards to the request for solar atop the new construction at this parcel. Everything CAB had feared and warned of in its earlier report has come to pass. An aggressively overscaled, hard-edged house in a preposterous metallic pumpkin palette, the permanent destruction of geological formations, and the ruination of the once picturesque sweep of lawn that had undulated down toward the river, now replaced with hard-edged terracing. These are not matters of individualistic, subjective aesthetics, but rather deliberate decisions to not adhere to the best practices in a SAS district. CAB is at a loss to explain why such deference was shown the applicant at the cost of the hamlet of Rhinecliff's natural resources and historical heritage. These decisions were not in the long-term interest of safeguarding what should be protected in the SAS, where once the now demolished cottage was anchored to the rock outcroppings, the new house has belligerently muscled aside the geology, leaving what's left in a shattered heap of gravel-sized chunks permanently spoiled. It is exactly the kind of postmodernist design that future architectural historians will associate with our selfish era of ecological destruction. CAB implores the planning board to ruminate on the additional aesthetic compromises that may result in the SAS with the addition of these systems onto a structure whose scale, style, and materials is clearly out of harmony with the site.
Well, to the extent that those letters are criticisms of a decision that the planning board has already made, the horse is really out of the barn on those, and they're really, those criticisms don't have a bearing on the decision that the board will make on this panel. With regard to Craig's inquiry about whether the site plan has been followed, the planning board could make an inquiry to Brian Tam about that question to get, while the review is going along, to get an answer to that question. That, depending on what the answer to that question is, could affect, whether this review would proceed. But I don't think the comment letters. I think the board is in a position where you're really bound to apply the town code with regard to solar, on building solar installations, and that's the boundary of this inquiry.
I would agree. Does anybody disagree with John's reading of that?
I'll just point of clarification, if some of the restrictions that were agreed upon in the site plan filing from 2 years ago were not followed or are not currently in place, would that hold up the decision of the planning board for this additional, like if a site has a violation on it, you can't move forward with an application. So if the whatever was promised 2 years ago is not yet complete, how does that affect the decision that we make?
The planning board would be, the enforcement decision is a discretionary determination to be made by the zoning enforcement officer, and the board would be bound by whatever the zoning enforcement officer's determination is. If it's determined, as you said, if it's determined that there's a violation and a notice of violation is issued, then it would put us up to the review of this project. If the zoning enforcement officer chooses not to take any enforcement action, then the review can proceed.
Right, because I think it's a small and maybe not necessarily relevant point about the historic nature of the building that was there, because it's not there anymore. It is placed within a historic district, and whether or not the structure that it replaced was a contributing resource or not, it's also not such an important or compelling point. However, it is within the scenic area of statewide significance, and it is within the LWRP, or LWRA, however you want to state it. And I recall at the time of the filing, seeing photographs that were taken from the middle of the river that showed, they put a little illustration of what this was going to look like, and you can hardly ever see it. So, with the building actually in place, how would a similar photograph illustrate the site in reality as opposed to what was proposed? And if something is planned and you don't get what was planned, then what do you do?
Yep.
And I think that's kind of what people are responding to, is looking at, oh my gosh, how did this come to pass?
Well, I think it might, at some point, we might want to talk about, having a training session with Jim, which we do periodically, and maybe this application is an appropriate case study for an exercise like that, where we take a look, at what the board knew at the time that the application was in front of the board. There was a lot of effort devoted to the review of that application, and to take a look at the site plan, and then take a look at the existing conditions right now.
Yeah.
And to the extent that there are lessons that can be gleaned from that experience, to be able to figure out what those are, become cognizant of them, and to make an effort to apply those on a prospective basis as the board moves forward with other reviews.
Okay, on another topic, one of your elevations, I think it's the south slope. It would be, what is R1? Is that the south?
Is the top one?
Yeah, on the upper right.
Yes.
Okay, that shows almost complete coverage on that elevation or on that slope,
Yes.
isn't there supposed to be a margin for like firefighter to walk without walking on
There
the
is,
panels?
yes, there is an exemption though if you have a access roof on the opposing side. So we do not need a 36-inch setback because the fire department would fight it from the other side. We just have to maintain the 18 inches off the roof for their ladder access, for their ladder roof on top.
Okay.
If we had panels on the other side, then we would have to have a pathway on the side coming up and then a pathway on the side coming back down. But because the fire department will fight it from the other side, they have full access to it. So they just need to get to the ridge to be able to vent it. So now they have an access to it.
Okay.
Well, that brings up the access, I mean, the access, driving up that driveway in my little car, and there's just a couple of construction vehicles up there. There was no room for a fire truck up there, one had to go up there, it's very narrow. And then on the south side of the house, I was standing, 25 feet off the house, and I said, where the heck is the property line here? Because the neighbor's house was like right there. It's overdone, but the other thing is, I didn't notice any new plantings of any type. There was a row of, I think, Cynthia along the east side that was there. They're fairly good size, but they've been there a while. Although I didn't see any new plantings at all.
I can't speak to the original site plan. I think what you had brought up about what was there, and there's definitely no plantings scheduled as per, the solar plan, so.
Well, we're not holding you accountable for that. You're here to represent a solar application, so we appreciate your tolerance with our discussion.
Is there, I understand you want them to all uphold to their original plan, right? I don't like the taste of leveraging solar for that. I'm talking about me. So I'm just curious on like what, because I brought this up in previous applications myself, is that the original plan wasn't done, couldn't really do anything about it, and at that point it was like, I mean, that's, they have a certain amount of time to get that done, and now I don't know, I think it's, we want solar. We want a lot of these things that are gonna, help save Mother Earth. At what balance, I guess, is what we.
Well, also just to say, asking if the plan is in compliance with the previous plan has nothing to do with whether the solar is approved or not. It's probably a good question to ask regardless whether there was an application in front of the board or not.
But the spirit in which I heard it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the spirit in which I heard it was, if things that were approved and anticipated in the original application have not been done, and if they were to be done, they would somehow soften other aspects of the view of the property from other vantage points. That to me is a question worth answering. I understand your point that this shouldn't be perceived of as retrospectively trying to change a decision that I think I believe we carefully made. But I do think that answering the question is going to certainly delay, but I don't think it's going to necessarily eliminate an approval process after this. So am I making sense? Is that the spirit in which, when you're saying, let's double check?
But there's the apples and oranges, okay? The compliance with the site plan is just the question of whether the site plan has been complied with, and the only impact that inquiry is going to possibly have would be if a violation is issued that would stop the review.
So it
for
wouldn't,
this.
so if we were to find that the things that have been put in place were not put in place, that has nothing to do with the approval of the solar, except in that it would slow down the approval process.
That's
if we were
correct.
to ask them to go back and finish the project.
Yes, that's correct. And then otherwise, the board's role is to apply the standards that for solar installations that are set forth in the zoning law. And also to remember that if the solar installation is allowed at this location, the town board, who is the maker of land use policy for the town, has made a decision that they're going to be allowed in this location, even though it's a historic hamlet. And the board or, you know, the advisory committees don't really have an ability within the boundaries of this application to change those decisions. You're bound to administer the zoning law as it stands. If the time comes where the town board decides they don't want to have solar in a historic district, they can make a change to accomplish that.
Does the building or zoning office, they have the ability to enforce, have an instrument to enforce action, regardless of the solar?
Yes,
Right, okay.
that's correct.
And, so what exactly is being proposed? Are you saying we're not willing to approve the solar application until we go and double check the site plan to see whether everything was conformed with? And I don't know that we have anything anyone can point to as a reason to believe that it wasn't. It's just, we have these questions all of a sudden?
My advice would be that if you want to make an inquiry to the zoning enforcement officer about compliance with the site plan, the board can do that, but the review should proceed until there's a determination by Brian Tam or not. You know, maybe he doesn't have to respond to every inquiry either. So.
But in normal circumstances, this could be voted on this evening. This is the public hearing for this. And all it
That's true.
is something to do with solar panels on a roof. So my question is
But
it
also,
necessary to
even
hold
if
that
the
up?
solar panels are approved, the issue of compliance with the site plan exists independently of that. And if it's determined that there's a violation, even though these panels are approved, enforcement efforts could still take place to bring the property into compliance with the site plan.
Right.
And I think the issue, correctly stated, is not just solar panels on the roof. Solar panels on a roof, on a building that is in a historic district and is part of the statewide, scenic area of statewide significance, and is part of the LWRP. And it's that, achieving that harmony is dependent on other promises that were made that maybe were not kept.
But
And-
this is pretty high up. You're not going to be doing any plantings that are going to interfere with the view of a roof from a road.
Okay, it's all supposed to work as a system. And this building was accepted given certain restrictions. And if those restrictions are not upheld, then it upsets the harmony.
Right,
So-
and I agree with that, and I'm just saying that I don't know that we have any reason to believe that they weren't, you know, that they didn't take place. And what John has just suggested, that we can go ahead on two routes here. One is dealing with solar panels, and the other is checking the site plan.
When were these photos taken?
Remember maybe, or when the snow was, within a few months?
So within the past year.
Oh, yeah.
Because I, again, don't have that earlier site plan, but there was supposed to be a row of plantings along that elevation in the bottom photograph, and I'm not seeing them. Did you see anything that looked like it was less than 2 years old?
So is there a, Kim, did you say this will be an unlisted action?
So it was declared to be an unlisted action at the last meeting, so the board still has to go through seeker part 2, which we can go through. It might be, but one of the, a few of the questions are dealing with harmony in the neighborhood. So that might be where the previous site plan approvals might come in play. There's there's at least 3 questions in the very beginning of talking about, there's a material conflict with the adaptive land use plan or zoning, if there's a change in use or intensity, and then if it impairs the character or quality of the existing community. And it could be, if screening was proposed that wasn't done, that might impact you know,
It could come up in that context.
yeah.
Yeah, and folks, I don't mean to be a pest about this, but, you know, the applicant has people who will come and speak to their needs. The SASS, the LWRP, the historic district, the only voice that those resources have are us. So I think we need to do our level best to make sure that those needs are met.
Well, I certainly was not prepared tonight to go further with seeker, with honest reaction myself.
What was
So
that?
I wasn't prepared to proceed with a part two this evening, and I don't think any of us are ready to proceed with a part two this evening. And so I think that brings us to the point of continuing the public hearing, and during which time we can ask Gretchen to pull the information on the approval so that we have it available, and then when we do, we can talk about when we can schedule part two. I agree with pretty much everything everybody said, that there are points to be made on both sides of this issue, and I do, however, see the merits of everything. So, I mean, I'm not trying to be Solomon here.
Could I just
And
ask
maybe-
specifically what is being proposed to do? Like, I understood what you said, and Gretchen will pull the previous information.
Well, the point is to continue the public hearing to presumably the next meeting, when we can do the part two.
And I did provide the board with blank copies of the short
Which you
EAF
have
part
here.
two, so you can just take a look at those questions. There's 11 questions, and, you know, you can consider them for the next meeting if you'd like.
And I would remind you that the EAF workbook that's online through DEC can be very, very helpful in terms of helping you understand what those questions are aiming at. And there are examples provided in the workbook to give you an idea. And they'll discuss order of magnitude and how to make a judgment about the impact. But, and because seeker is separate from the zoning law, your scope of inquiry with regard to seeker is defined in the environmental assessment form. So it may be possible that some of the concerns that you're discussing, Craig, may come up in the seeker context.
Let me, before we wrap this up, let me ask if there's anyone here from the public wishing to comment on this application. Yes, sir.
So Dave Behrens, I am at 4 Slate Dock Road and also 389 Cliff Road, which are the two properties. One is basically to the east and then one is to the south. So my concern at looking at this is the panels on the south. The panels on the south side, when you look at the two houses, 389 versus 8 Slate Dock Road, they're probably both in the whatever the 25 to 30 foot range from the line. So they're probably about 60 foot apart, give or take. I don't know exactly, but give or take. And I did take a picture the other day from 389, looking out a window, and you look right out into the solar panel. So the western side, I'm not worried about. I mean, the western side to me, that's going over the river. But the southern side to me, I mean, is going to, at some point, you got to figure that the sun is going to travel north and south, right? So the sun is not going to be on a normal path or a path every single moment. It runs a little further north of the house and it runs a little further south of the house. So depending upon the time of year, I don't know how the assessment is done, but depending upon the time of year, I don't know how those panels are going to affect the south view, which would be the 389 house. So that's my concern right now. I don't have a good feeling about that right now with everything else that I've seen.
And you're talking about the reflectance?
The reflectance, yeah, glare. I don't know how that works. The other issue is that on the far side of the house, there is a transformer and a electric box on the ground. So that was as far as Central Hudson, I guess, could put them up the road. So if you look at the driveway, come to the top of the driveway, and there's a big oak tree on, it's kind of almost on a border of our property. There is basically an electric panel, you know, your meter, running like that, and then the other thing is a tree. It's I believe it's your because the house is further than 150 feet or whatever that Central Hudson number is that they've got to have. There's actually a ground transformer sitting right there. So those are sitting. If you look at the Forest Lake Dock Road directly as it looks outward, I mean those are like smack straight out. So if Central Hudson has got to do something yet for this project and the solar panels, could those be moved and pushed around?
Thank you.
Yep.
You okay with that, sir? I mean, you don't have to answer it, I just want to make sure you
No, I understood the
understood it.
When I speak about the glare, we can get you a copy of the glare report. There is in May, June, and July some green glare. The way they constitute is there's green, yellow, and red. Red like can cause blindness, yellow can cause, temporary, like with a picture, and green they classify as low potential for any temporary after imaging. So there is green, but there's pretty much almost on every solar system there will be green, but it doesn't really affect view. And typically there's some almost on every month, but only in 3 months. Totaling, I think, like 1,500 minutes over those 3 months that there's even any glare. But I can get you a copy of it if you want to review.
So there is glare and impact.
There's going to be an impact on every solar panel coming off, but it's the extent and the severity of the glare. Where really green is just not a formality, but it's saying what's there. And it's at optimal conditions if there's no rain and there's no trees or anything like that, but there's no yellow and there's absolutely no red on either right, not just the one facing south.
These are government standards?
It's a PV analysis, it's a glare analysis.
PV.
Photovoltaic analysis of the panels. So you go into
Done by?
Forge Solar.
And they took into account the movement and trajectory of the sun.
And the location, correct, they put in the GPS, they put in location, they put in elevation, and it's all listed, I can get
Has
it
that
out.
been submitted to the planning board?
I believe it was, yes.
All right, so you should be able to reach out to Gretchen. If it's not already up on the website, it's available.
Actually, it's
Okay.
And I'll inquire and get some information regarding the transformer and
I just- I'm sorry, I had a question about that, because I did look at those charts,
Sure.
and it showed a graph, with, kind of a nonlinear curve, and it was covered in green, and then there was a yellow area. Is that the yellow glare that you're talking about, or is that the only?
I think that dot is the occurrence of the glare. I'm going by, which, again, I'll admit, I'm not an expert on it, so
Okay.
I called the company and went through the analysis on how to read it, so I'm focusing on glare minutes and severity. So PV1 only had about 400 minutes just of green, and then PV2 had about 1,500 green, and then it spread out over the summer months.
And I think the locations that they were analyzing were from the Rhinecliff Road?
Yeah, the path coming out all the way around.
Okay, but not from the neighbor's house
Let
necessarily.
me check the path. Not directly from his house.
Yeah, okay. So I think one was from across the river and one was from
Correct.
the road, okay.
Sharon, when you said that that going from the north, the roof and the solar panels would be visible, was that the southern roof, or was that the R1?
You said driving.
Yeah, when you're driving.
Yeah,
Would that be
yes, because animals are on the south side. of
So the
wall.
R1,
And then they're on the east side, they're on the east
The
side,
west
right?
side, the west and the south.
and
West and south.
Because I was under the impression because if they were on the east side, facing the road.
No, because they're going to be facing the river, so the view from the road, I think, is on the east side,
Let me
which
see if I
won't
can
have any
pull up
panels
the-
on.
I think I have a
Correct.
aerial view of
The road is on the east.
The panels are on the east side and the south side.
No,
that. So,
the panels are on the west side.
are you-
The panels are on the west side.
Panels on the west side and the south side for your drawing.
There you go.
So they would be on this is the R1, right?
No, that's not the house though.
That's not the
That's
house?
the old house.
That's the old house.
That's the one that got torn down.
Okay, so this is on parcel access.
Okay.
I was just wondering, do you, are all the
Actually, that panel is on the east side. That panel is on the east side, so it's facing the road. You see that from the road.
The bottom is correct, and then that's the
bottom
one
one,
facing the house, which you
if-
referred to.
Right, so that's going to be facing the road and 4 Slate Dock Road and the, not the river.
And are the R1 panels necessary for the, I know that they're, for the production or for the, I know there's usually a cost effectiveness about you need a certain amount of panels to generate a certain amount of electricity.
Correct, that's why they had to max out the south and the east. The south is the most energy consuming.
But there are no panels planned for the accessory building.
Where was the shed that was mentioned earlier? Because I always saw the large house and a big garage.
I think the word shed was used interchangeably with what
Garage.
garage.
What's that shed?
No,
Yeah, the three-car garage.
It's to the, on the bottom picture, it's to the right. It's just out of view on the right-hand side.
Yes,
And it's a monstrous shed.
yes,
It's a brown barrage.
okay. So are we at the point of a motion to continue the public hearing?
Can I just ask, what will happen between now and when this is continued? What will,
I think Gretchen
The
will
plan,
Gretchen will get the previous approvals and provide that to the board. And ask Brian, Tam to look at everything and confirm if everything's in compliance.
We'll go away and look at this?
Yeah, you can review the EAF, part 2 draft, not a draft, but the blank document, and then at the next meeting that this would be on, probably be able to explore what those findings have been.
sounds good?
Very clear?
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. So may I have a motion to continue the public hearing with the May 6th to May 6th?
So
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion
Christian, can I ask a question? The HVAC and community
So,
report.
So it's not the next CD
It's on this is on the track.
Would you send
The next public hearing for this evening is
And
Mike's.
Melody, did you want to have a chance to look at the landscape of the previous approvals, or would you like to make a motion to have Brian, you refer it to Brian Tam at this stage?
Well, are they mutually exclusive?
Well, I would say I feel like it's kind of an action, if you're asking Brian to look at it, it's an action of the plan, and making that request to Brian to look at it.
I think that's fine, but I also would like.
You'd have a chance to look at it
original
yourself.
approvals, the original site plan approval to go to planning board members. So-
Yes, yeah, you don't need a motion to look at the old one,
Fine.
but if you want Brian to look at it, you might want to make a motion.
I'll make that motion, please, second it.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The second public hearing for this evening, Mike's Tree Service. We have a request from the applicant to continue their public hearing until June the 3rd. They are waiting on information from the Department of Health.
No, I just asked if anyone's here for,
I was going to go to that next.
Sorry, you're
Because
not.
it is a public
Yeah,
hearing.
okay, good.
Is there anyone here from the public wishing to comment on Mike's Tree Service, which is for site plan review for the use of the front office as a medical office? Anyone? You here for that? No? Okay, well, all right, hearing none, may I have a motion and a second to continue till June 3rd?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, Sharon and Craig, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. The third public hearing for this evening is that of Jeffrey Valenti, 6830 Route 9, site plan review and change in use to dentist office. Again, we have a request from the applicant who is still waiting on information from the Department of Health to continue until May 6th. Mr. Valenti indicated to us that he has received another follow-up letter from the Department of Health that they have raised other questions that they need to work on. I will also say that I have been receiving a number of inquiries about there was a sign there advertising rental space in the past. It's kind of back again. It went away and now it's back. And there are a number of people asking what's going on. I haven't seen the sign myself. I don't know if it's advertising retail space or just advertising rental space.
Yeah, I saw it, but I can't remember.
I can't remember the specific detail, but I have asked Mr. Valenti, I asked him today to clarify for me because I was under the impression that he was confident that it was going to be all medical or dental related in the building. And he's following up, but he seems to be under the impression that he can get approval for the medical portion and the dental portion of the building and then come back at a future time for how the rest of the building would be used as opposed to straight retail or medical. I was under the impression that we were more likely looking for what the use was going to be as it related to parking spaces of retail versus appointments with a dentist or whatever. So he's asked for this delay. I've asked him to give us as much information as he can on the proposed use for what I think was about half the building, if I'm recalling correctly. Over half. So that to me is a large bit of information that's missing. And we've kind of made him aware of that, because I'm assuming that the land is wet, it's swampy. That's why the health department, I think, is taking its time with this, and it'd be best to know sooner rather than later the impact of the use, at least in my opinion. But may I have a motion to continue?
So moved.
Thank you, Sharon. Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
May 6th, I think.
Yeah, is there anyone from the public here?
Is there a date that it's continued to?
May 6th. He's requested May 6th.
Thank you.
The last public hearing before us this evening is that of Darren Prinz and Kelly Swiss on Ackercook Road. Site plan review for the construction of a single-family dwelling, covered terrace and in-ground pool with fence. Since, looking here, since our last meeting, we have been notified. I'm in the wrong place, let me
It's
find.
on page 10.
Page what? 10?
10. Oh, no, the screen already.
Oh, okay. The applicant has received a stop work order from the zoning administrator related directly to this project proposal for tree removal not done consistent with the conditions required by the planning board. Subsequent to our last meeting, the applicant went ahead and we recommended that he meet with and work with the zoning administrator to identify dead trees so as to allow them to proceed with some work on the property while we were continuing to review the application and in particular the driveway aspects of the application. We referred the application to CPL and have received back from CPL their engineering comments. But in the meantime, the applicant's team went ahead without consulting. They had made preliminary contact with Brian to go in the field but without an actual sign off from Brian, they went ahead and did tree removal. We have not been, they were noted, the notice of violation was mailed out, I believe, Gretchen, we confirmed on March 19th. And until today, there was no response from the applicant to the notice of violation of the stop work. So they have not entered into any conversations with Brian yet about what steps might be taken to address the issuance of the notice of violation and the stop work order.
And basically what they've done is to cut the trees for the driveway all the way up to the building lot, right?
Including the building lot.
Including the building lot.
Including the building lot, and the point, it is, Brian, Gretchen and I can confirm that we spoke to Brian, and Brian spoke directly to the contractor who was responsible for doing the work. Brian agreed to go out into the field and encouraged this gentleman to confirm the trees that were dead and to be removed, and agreed to go into the field and confirm that, and then they would agree to the removal of dead trees. They did not get back to Brian. We do not know. I've seen some photographs. It certainly doesn't look to me like all the trees were dead. There was certainly concerns also raised by the highway superintendent, who saw the condition of the road after the work had been completed, and subsequent storms have shown a great deal of runoff and mud on the road.
You know, there's water that flows right at the driveway entrance. Gary and I took a walk and just looked from Appleton Road. I mean, it looks to me like all of the trees on the driveway, I mean, you can only see so far, and I wasn't going to walk on that property, but it looks like all of the trees that would be in the driveway were taken down.
And of course, one of the major subjects of discussion at the last meeting was the alignment of the driveway, and whether, we're not at a point to have yet determined whether the application as it was submitted was the direction we were going to go in. But that being said, we did have an opportunity this afternoon to speak briefly to Zach Hall, who is the representative for the applicant. He now understands that he needs to be in touch with the zoning administrator. It's now in Brian's hands. This is not an issue that we resolve here.
Who received the stop order? Who was it sent to?
I believe the stop work order was sent to multiple parties. I know that it went to the owners, the applicant's representatives, the architectural firm, the applicant's representative. I believe it also went to the contractor and to Dave's Tree Service.
And it went by snail mail? I mean,
Let's go by certified mail.
Goes by certified mail.
There was no phone call or anything?
There is actually a procedure with the zoning law as to how this has to be done, and it has to be by certified mail.
It's just that takes a while, and while they're cutting trees, it's kind of sad that
I think
Well,
the trees
we
were
did-
already
the
cut.
trees
It's
were
already
on.
they were already cut.
The trees, we met on Monday, and we worked through we tried to find a path for them to, they were indicating they were confronting the issue of the long-eared bat. And that's the discussion we had about trying to make an accommodation with trees that were already dead. And I know that they reached out to Brian, but by the following Friday, the trees were gone. We did not know they were gone until several people drove by and reported that the tree cutting was taking place. And so we immediately followed up, and it was the following Tuesday that Brian sent the notice of violation. After he followed up with, I think, phone calls to several of the parties that were involved in the actual work. That being said, with these in place, we are no longer in a position to continue to review this application until Brian has taken whatever action, worked through the situation with the applicant's representatives and all the parties, and some proposed resolution.
And do you think you'll confer with us Brian?
I believe that this, I don't know what the circumstances of him conferring with them. This is a zoning administrator's issuance.
Yeah, the staff work order was issued by the zoning enforcement officer. I don't know if he would, I'm not sure if he would reach out to you or not. I think it's an enforcement issue at this point.
But isn't he going to make some sort of decision like, well, okay, I guess since it's already done, you can use this as your driveway?
No, he can't do
But then what can he do? What will he do?
that. I don't know what he'll do.
Or what can he do?
You might require, I don't know, perhaps some plantings, perhaps some remediation to try to do. I'm not really sure what his options.
It seems to me like whatever decision he's going to make, there needs to be a consultation with the planning board, because that very issue was what was before the planning board, just before, we set another meeting. The issue was, will we use an existing driveway or road, and will he continue off that road, which was always meant to be the case for his property, or will he build a new driveway off Eckendrick Road? And so if Brian's going to make any decision about that, it seems to me that he ought to be talking to the planning board.
The planning board can pass a resolution to communicate with Brian and ask to be, I don't know whether you want a consultation with him or to be copied on the communications. Just whatever it is that you'd like to have, ask him for it.
You will recall that we had a similar situation on another property, that being, as reports in the past, where trees were taken down. And the site was visited by the special prosecutor, who at that time did confer with the planning board as to what a possible remediation was. So there's some precedent for that happening in the past. And I personally agree with you that whatever resolution here is tied to the discussion we were having about which driveway we were going to approve and how we felt about it. So I would be very happy to have a resolution placed before us that we ask the zoning enforcement officer to consult with, involve the planning board,
And allow us to let him know what was going on.
well, he's aware of that.
Yeah, and also, whatever gets sorted out as far as clearing violation, it wouldn't on its own result in the de facto approval of that driveway site, because there are a lot of other things, not just the removal of the trees, that stand in the way of that approval. There's sightline issues, and there's also the steepness of the driveway, whether or not it meets that 15% grade.
And I did believe that the CPL report was quite detailed in their analysis, and I spoke to them personally, and certainly I think their report reflects the fact that they do not believe that this is the best designed driveway, or that it meets all of the requirements that they think are important here.
Unlike building code violations, you can't undo or redo something like cutting down a tree. You can't uncut the trees.
And you
So
can't plant tall ones.
It's significant.
It's significant, and the other portion, you may recall that there was a letter, they did consult with Bob Wyatt, the highway superintendent, and while he indicated to them what they would have to do if they got approval for that new driveway, did not in any way, was not in any way his consent to go ahead and do it. So they seem a little confused about that as well. And you may recall that part of his advice to them indicated that if they were to go ahead with it in the location they proposed, there would need to be significant changes to the curb and rock cutting and hills if we didn't feel the sightlines were adequate. So taking down the trees did more than just take down the trees. It has a larger impact, and it's significant.
Now, I understand that going off the existing road, you would end up in a significantly longer driveway.
Well, I don't, Gretchen, I mean, really, I meant this evening, I really do not wish us to continue to have a conversation about the application before us, because I think we need to stop the process right now because they're in violation, and do a hard call on that. And when they come back, then we'll take up the discussion again on what are the pros and cons of the various driveways that are opportunities to move the application along. But I think we need to not continue it at this moment.
Okay, I would just like to say that if and when we do continue, I would like to go to the site, and maybe others would also like to go.
Okay. So I would, I'm asking if there's anyone here from the public. If so, please come up and tell us your name and address and your comments.
Don Chevrolet, we're the neighbor. Look at the address, I think 14 Barry Taylor. We're basically where the driveway has been cut. It's not what's in the plan. It's not the alternative driveway. It's actually been cut on our lot line. So it's a different location. And I'm just, so therefore I'm obviously interested because it's right on our lot line and sometimes exceeding it. And I'm just trying to get a sense of, if it's not at the planning board, how do I monitor if the decisions are being made at the ZBA? How do I?
What decision?
On the driveway is made at the zoning board of appeals.
No.
Zoning enforcement.
Oh, I'm sorry, enforcement officer. How do I monitor the situation if it's not in front of the planning board?
You will be, you're saying your driveway, I'm a little confused.
I'm the neighbor that is right next to this, the
And
applicant's
your
lot.
property is served by your own driveway?
So I am that existing driver that you guys are discussing.
The Taylor or the
Barrett
Correct.
Taylor Drive.
So
It's the
that's a-
cul-de-sac that was part of the
That's right, so
original.
that driveway is on what is known as lot number 1, where there's an existing house. And the applicant and myself are using that. So, correct. So the applicant is asking for a driveway here. In the plan, it actually ended up cutting the trees on the line instead. And I'm just trying to monitor the situation, so I'm on top of, because it's on our lot line, it exceeded it, so.
Where the trees came down?
Yeah, it's not, so in the application, it's here.
Oh,
It's actually been cut here. On
all right, well,
the
that
axis is
would
different
be
than.
all resolved.
Maybe,
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah,
So if you wouldn't mind terribly, my suggestion is for you to compose a letter to the zoning enforcement officer and to the planning board. It doesn't have to be long, but just incorporates what you told the board tonight, so that we have a record. And if it's possible for you to attach a couple of photographs to that letter to show what's happened, and if you can show where your lot line is, because you're saying that there's been an encroachment onto your property.
Yeah,
by some of the
it's
work.
not significant, but I obviously want to monitor.
Yeah, well, there's also, there's setbacks and other, it shouldn't be that close to your property, let
Oh, I
alone
see.
beyond it. But if you would send that letter to the planning board and also to the zoning enforcement officer to put them on notice of your circumstances, and then I would suggest further that you follow up with, ask the zoning enforcement officer for a meeting and go in and sit down with Brian. He's very nice, and explain what your circumstances are. It's important that he understand what's happening on your property so that whatever resolution that ends up being crafted for the violation, that's something that can be folded into the considerations that will be taken on the enforcement action. And then your letter also will be a record in front of the planning board so that if this ever comes back to the planning board again, it can become part of the board's considerations when and if the application returns.
I see. Can I just ask, what is the setback for the driveway from?
I don't know
I see.
offhand.
I would take it a step further, and I would encourage you to ask Brian to come out and do a field review so that you can physically
Yes,
show
that'd
them.
be great, thank you.
I know he'd be willing to do that, and it will help him, it will help inform him as he's going through the process of discussing the impact of everything. So thank you for bringing that forward.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
And the planning board clerk just stepped out to get the zoning enforcement officer's card, which she'll give to you so you can reach out and contact her.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Anyone else? I would like to have a motion to continue the public hearing to a
You should
date.
probably wait until Gretchen comes back so the motion gets
Do
made.
that.
And so Melody, while we're waiting for Gretchen, just as a reminder, if we're continuing the public hearing to an undetermined date, it will need to be renoticed. But being that with the notice violation, you can't be doing any processing of the review anyway, that is the best way to proceed.
So Gretchen, I'm asking for a motion to continue the public hearing to a date and time undetermined at this point. Okay, I have a motion. So moved. Motion in second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries.
And then do you want to have a motion to table the application until such time as the zoning enforcement officer advises the planning board of a resolution of the enforcement action?
I would like to move to table the,
What did he say?
the application.
table the application until such time.
As the zoning enforcement officer provides direction.
Yes.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries.
And was there another resolution about asking the CEO to involve the planning board in any discussions? Would you like
I
us?
made that motion.
Oh, you made that one, I'm sorry.
I don't remember who seconded it.
That's okay, so I'm good with me.
One second. And I did that. All right, if there's nothing else, we'll do the PCBA referrals this evening. That's the first is case 1057, Thomas Babinski, 54 Cedar Heights Road. Have the information from me, probably you know better than I do.
So this gentleman, Tom Badisky, he's going to be putting up a deer fence. I think he initially had proposed it for 8, it's in his front yard. With the setbacks, you can have a fence within 50 feet of the road, but it has to be 4 feet, so he's proposing 6 feet. It's primarily a deer fence. He's trying to start an orchard, a little orchard on his property. So he's asking for a 2-foot high fence variance. Not an 8-foot, so he doesn't need a special use permit from the planning board. So there's no planning board approval, just ZBA. And if the area is granted, he'll get a fence permit from the ZBA. So Jim's comments was that he found that the requested variance raised one minor planning concern related to the fence gate and recommended that the ZBA require the applicant to ensure that the gate color matches as closely as possible to the proposed fence, not be black as depicted in the representative image, and be placed in the back of the fence, not the front of the lot or front yard. And also recommends ZBA rely on its own study of the facts in deciding the application in accordance with the criteria set forth in Town Code Chapter 125, including consideration of the input of neighboring property owners. Did everyone get a chance to see the fence? I believe I still have it on my computer.
I haven't seen the fence. It's wood and then wire.
Yeah, like the door, the gate to the door is kind of like a wired entrance. I think he said, if I recall, I believe the gate will be in the back.
Mhm.
It's just, it was just a,
Well, the gate, the news he gave us
yeah, this was
kind
a,
of stood out, and Jim was just asking A, to put it to the back, and B, to see if you could change the color a little bit. The fence itself kind of fades away in
and
general.
I think he also mentioned that the depiction here was for an 8-foot fence. It will be about, it'd probably be, end up about here, so.
We did in the pre-conference, Sharon will probably remember, we did look to see if there were any other locations on the property, and if this could be moved around or jiggered around, and there really wasn't any.
I don't buy it, it's really not.
So I
And
think
here's
that we accept Jim's recommendation on this.
Second?
Yeah, I've been to the property, because we recently, not,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so, and they already started planting some trees, but they're probably a dozen or
Yeah,
14 trees out front, which he got beat up last year, so.
okay.
I
So now
understand.
he understands why he needs it.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Case number 1058, Alphonse Patoya, on Rhinebeck Road.
Yeah, so for this one, the gentleman has a, so he has an existing house right here, and he has an existing garage and an existing shed. He wants to add, it's adding a little living area, expanding the single-family dwelling house, and then he is proposing to attach the two-car garage as well. The ZBA did question about the number of garages. He explained, he's retiring, he wants to just be able to have a garage that's actually connected to the house. He is not removing this garage, but he's not going to use it as a garage, he's going to use it more for he does woodworking, so he'll be using it as a hobby. I believe the ZBA had asked if he could just change that classification, just make a note that the garage will be used as another garage.
Or a dwelling.
Or a dwelling, right. But yeah, it's just going to be, he said it's just for hobby woodworking, and he just wants to have the garage closer so that he's not having the elements that he's talking about. I think, so Jim, so the area variance is there's allowable of a 7% building coverage in that area. This, with the addition and the garage, it will be about a 10% building coverage, so he's asking for 3% building coverage. And just so you can also see, this is the parcel right here, and this is owned by his one neighbor. Actually, he's pretty much surrounded on all sides by his one neighbor. It's just a large parcel that's owned by the same gentleman. He's gotten in touch with him, and we've asked for written comments, but what we were told was that the neighbor has no issues.
But it's closer to the fronting street? Is that
It's
separate
not,
area?
actually. We also
Oh, okay.
discussed that. So if you look at, so this is what the existing house looks like. So this will be added, the addition will be added here and extended out. This deck actually extends further out, so it does not actually need a variance for that.
Okay.
And then it will be the same material, same color as what's currently on there.
Jim has a procedural.
Yeah, so he did, in some of the concerns that Jim has raised, he mentioned that the proposed addition appears to be closer to the fronting street than the existing house, which I just explained with the deck, it doesn't actually project closer. The addition of the garage to the house combined with the other accessory in the aggregate appears to exceed the floor area of the principal dwelling on the lot. I'm not sure of that. I can look into that or talk to Brian about that to confirm. And as the third accessory structure with the attached garage, any additional accessory structures proposed on the site would need approval from the planning board unless the proposed structure is specifically exempted. So the recommendation is that the variance does raise planning concerns related to specific accessory structure regulations. Zoning code as written classifies a garage, even if attached to the principal structure, as an accessory structure. Based on the review of the material submitted, aerial image of Dutchess County parcel access, this garage would become the third accessory structure on the property, which is the maximum permitted by code for a lot of this size. A proposed garage addition appears to project closer to the fronting street than the existing house, which is not permitted, and the addition of the garage to the house combined with other accessory structures in the aggregate appears to exceed the floor area of the principal dwelling unit. If it is confirmed, an additional variance will be required. DBA should ensure that all criteria in the zoning code, section 125-27, which is accessory structures, are met, or the appropriate variance is believed is requested. So, if you would like, we can perhaps remove subsection A, since DBA has confirmed that, but
So subsection B becomes subsection A, and then we make that motion, and it includes recommending you rely on your own study house. Are you okay?
I move that we accept that.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? The last order of business that I mentioned at the beginning, you will recall that one of the areas of concern that's been consistently raised by the neighbors regarding the Rock Ledge application is the impact of traffic in the neighborhood. And the applicant has retained the services of Creighton Manning over a considerable period of time. We've seen reports, and we've seen updated reports. I think updated reports as recently as 2021, but don't hold me to that. They have, as you know, you've seen letters that have come in recently from various people who are following this project, and they are asking continually about traffic. We have identified an independent traffic consultant that is available to work with us on a review of the Creighton Manning reports, not an independent third-party traffic analysis, but someone who will take an independent look at the project reports that were done by Creighton Manning and report to the planning board as to the sufficiency, the accuracy, the protocols, the way that Creighton Manning undertook their study of the traffic impact. Charlie Blakeman, the owner and applicant, has agreed in writing to allow that consultancy to go forward, and obviously we'll pay for that consultancy through escrow. And we have a draft agreement that we received from the gentleman. John, do you want to address how you found him or anything like that?
I found him because one of my firm's other planning board clients had used, his name is Stefan Mafia, and they had used him on occasions and were very satisfied with his work. So I reached out to him. I sent him the Creighton Manning materials for him to just take a look at. I sent him some background information, and I also provided him with the comments from the neighbors so that he could get a sense of the concerns that have been raised during the course of the review. And he's familiar with those things, so he submitted a proposal to the board. He'll conduct a review and write a report, and he'll be available to attend a meeting if the board wants him to do that, to discuss his findings.
And I believe he indicated that he could turn this report around in a timely fashion so that it would be available
Yes.
when we reconvene to discuss Rock Ledge the next time. I believe if you are in agreement that this is an appropriate step, we could entertain a motion to retain the services of the gentleman whose name I always forget, and with the approval now in writing from Mark and Charlie Blakeman, we can sign that contract and he can begin to work. We've also provided him with links to the Panda video, thank you very much, Panda video, of the special meeting, so that he will be able firsthand to hear the comments raised by the neighbors we're not interpreting what the neighbor's questions are, he will be able to listen to them. So I believe if questions, anyone?
I just wanted to make a comment that it was a little bit startling, the amount of suspicion and skepticism that was brought up in regard to the traffic study and also the well tests and all of that. And I think it needs to be made clear that nobody's accusing anybody of cooking the books. I mean, the facts are the facts, and we have to assume that people with a professional qualification are behaving professionally and are competent at what they do. But then there's also a level of interpretation that comes with a set of facts. And having that independent view of the same facts will help us to come to a more neutral and unbiased decision. So I think it's a good and important move.
And let me also say that the person, the consultant we're speaking with has also shared with us that he is not an associate nor hasn't been an associate of Creighton Manning. So there's no potential conflict of interest there. And I will say, to echo what you're saying, on a comparable note, the other issue that's obviously been raised multiple times is water and sewer, and we're working with the applicant to connect the dots between those questions and the proposed operator of those systems, which is Dutchess County Water and Wastewater. And I see them in the same way that I see this traffic consultant as an independent reviewer of the materials that have been presented by the applicant. So I think this is an important and positive step forward for us to be able to say, for a relatively modest amount of money, and I also think it demonstrates Mr. Blakeman's willingness to continue to provide the most accurate update information possible. So if you're all in agreement, then I have a motion to...
Melody, I'm recused.
Thank you, Edna, for reminding me. The motion would be to retain the services of...
In accord of Stefan, S-T-E-P-H-A-N, Mafia, M-A-F-F-I-A, and he's a sole proprietor, so there's no company. To engage him to be a traffic consultant to the board in accordance with the terms of the proposal he has submitted.
Motion?
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Sharon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? The motion carries. That means someone to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, one other update before you do that, if you don't mind, I'll be very quick.
Yeah.
This is on a matter that's not on your agenda for tonight, but this is Wireless Edge in the Moody's site. As you recall, I mentioned at the last meeting I was having difficulty reaching Mr. Grave. I've been subsequently advised by Mr. Grave that he has chosen to retire from the RF consulting business. I am in searching for another RF consultant for the board. I will keep you posted on that. The applicant's very concerned about that, but we're searching as hard as we can. There are not actually a lot of people out there that do this. So I'll just keep you posted. I just wanted to let you know we're working on it.
He's decided to retire, but
He was semi-retired.
But I mean, all he needs to do is look at some maps.
He's decided to retire quite emphatically.
All right.
So anyone that wants to do extra research on the side to find another RF person?
Yeah, he actually told me yes, and I thought we were all set, and then he said no. So,
Okay.
Well, we can't guess the reasons why there's a hard stop. There's lots of reasons. Anybody else? Anything else?
I just, to go back to say, Doc, and we mentioned earlier, and I think is a good suggestion, potentially having Jen do a little workshop on that. Because I do think we did a lot of due diligence on that. I don't think it was long drawn out, and I think based upon the findings of HAVAC and CAB, maybe we misstepped on one. I think if there's anything we learned from that, I'd be much more than happy to spend a half hour to to take a look at that, and I think it, if anything, there's a historical factor. I think there's a lot that happened, and I think, I think even today, in today's conversation, there's a lot of upset people about it, and it's reflecting on us, and we can take that opportunity to learn. And Jim could help us kind of put that together, and I don't know what that looks like, but I'm not looking to waste town money and resources, but if we can learn, I'd be very open to it.
Well,
And I want to say something else too about that, Sean. I agree completely. I think that as an exercise, I think it'd be really useful. I do want to say something in the defense of the board, which is that one of the things that's often not realized by people who are commenting on the board or seeking to have them go in a particular direction is that your authority is limited to administering the zoning law as it is. And, zoning laws are imperfect documents. They're, the town board's passing a law that covers the whole town, which covers a whole variety of different circumstances. We do not have architectural review in Rhinebeck. And so the authority that the board has to exercise over a particular application has its limitations, and sometimes those limitations manifest themselves in ways that can sometimes look like what someone might call failure, but it's really not. It's just something that didn't get covered by, and I think there were definitely elements where the board bumped up against the limits of its jurisdiction in that application. So, but I still think there would definitely, I wouldn't mind going through that exercise myself also, because I'm just as interested in learning how we can improve, or what lessons we would draw from that experience.
Well, I would thank you for saying that, because it's my recollection of that particular application as having a great number of issues attached to it that many of which were outside our control. I do not recall getting advice from either HAPAC or CAB at the time that was as strong and persuasive as their comments have been retrospectively. I recognized and recall speaking to them directly that this is an important project, and certainly nothing could be in an LWRP or in a more prominent position. And if you have, if you want to make a stand, this is a place to do it. And I don't recall that we were admonished. And I would once again say for the record, it would be extremely helpful. And I will say this on the record because I feel strongly about it. I would rather that the representatives of HAPAC and CAB come in and appear before us and share their comments in person, because I too see those as opportunities to educate the planning board so that we can engage in a dialogue with them. And I found the two reports this evening to be less than helpful in terms of that communication process between these advisory boards and us. I want to learn from them, I want their opinions, but I don't think the way this was delivered this time.
Can I just add, I didn't really read those two reports as attacks on the planning board. I read them as anguish about what was happening, really.
And I think they are, but I also think sometimes, word choice is important in expressing anguish.
That's true.
And so I'm just saying, I'm agreeing with John that my recollection of that was that everybody cared very deeply about that application, and the planning board members reviewed it seriously. And I remember.
I think one of the reasons that the application was so lengthy was that there were continued attempts to try to find channels in the zoning law to address the issues that were being raised during the course of the review. And correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, but I think a single-family residential home is probably a type 2 action, so the board didn't have seeker at its disposal either in its review of the application. So those are all things that matter.
Well, since we are required to have annual training sessions, let us continue this conversation with you and see if we can develop this into something that will help us all, and I would encourage us to include APAC and CAB members in that training so that we're all hearing the same stuff.
Yeah, we'll talk to Jim, and it actually could be, I don't mean this in the wrong way, but it actually could be kind of fun. I mean, certainly better than the usual training, okay, we're gonna go through, this is what seeker says to do, you know, blah, blah, blah. So it's an experience that you all had, and so it'd be enriching to sort of find out, you know, what we can draw from that.
Well, we've had discussions about workshops before, and then they have not come to pass.
That's right.
So,
They're hard to schedule.
so that's something to keep in mind, since this is something we'd all like to do. You know, let's find a date and do it.
We'll just work within existing calendars and availability. We're all doing our best.
Yep.
All doing our best here, Edna. Okay, are we now at a point of asking for a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So moved.
Unless you'd like to stay longer. I have a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention. Even the last member of the public is
I
gone.
know, I knew things were bad when I saw Lenny head
When
out,
Lenny
so.
leaves-
Gave up on you.
When Lenny leaves, you know the ball game's over.